Psychonauts is one of these games that absolutely deserves a proper remaster, and if Legacy of Kain can come back from the dead after all these years and get a really nice remaster, then I do not see why Psychonauts cannot get the same treatment. This is a game with an extremely loyal fanbase, completely unique identity, and one of the most creative worlds ever put into a platformer. So today I wanted to see how close we can get to a proper modern remaster using mods. And the results are genuinely impressive. Now that I have your attention, I should probably make one thing clear straight away. Most of the actual work here was done by one incredibly dedicated modder, and that is Shiba Inc., the creator of the HD texture mod. So when I say I remastered Psychonauts with mods, what I really mean is that I took this already brilliant game, installed the right fixes, and brought it as close as I could to what I imagine a proper modern remaster might look like. But the heavy lifting, that credit goes to Shiba, and this single mod does a ridiculous amount for the game, along with a reshade provided by the creator. Psychonauts already looked good when it originally released. Maybe not in a raw technical sense by today's standards, but artistically it was always incredibly strong. The character designs, the colors, and the weird exaggerated shapes with the environments and the level themes all gave it a proper identity, and it is similar to a lot of games I have covered previously on this channel. You could remove the color from these characters, show me only their silhouettes, and I would still know exactly who they are. That is good design in my opinion, and this game is completely full of it. That's how you knew when you were playing it. It's just not another platformer, it's something special. It was a game about a psychic summer camp, mental worlds, and emotional baggage, and all sorts of crazy stuff. And whatever else Double Fine at the time decided to throw in there. It is very weird, but in the best possible way. Every level feels like it has its own personality, and it feels like it came from a completely different corner of someone's brain, which is very fitting for the theme. And this is the kind of thing that really sticks with you and has stuck with me ever since I played this game when I was a kid. It's full of soul and originality that we don't really get in games anymore. It feels like a product of a completely different era, back when games were allowed to be strange and risky and original. And I know that it sounds like an old man yelling at clouds, but I do miss that era sometimes. Modern gaming still has original ideas here and there, of course it does, right? But I get tired of watching every game showcase and seeing yet another open world Souls-like third-person over-the-shoulder action game. There was something different about this period of gaming. People were willing to take risks, developers kind of go all out. And companies were willing to greenlight weird ideas, and games like Psychonauts are exactly why I miss that, and you don't really get that anymore. And this game had no business being as creative as it was, but look, here we are now. I still remember coming home from school and my dad randomly turning up with a new pirate copy of some game for me to try, and that's how I first discovered Psychonauts, for a pirate copy. It's just handed down to me, right? A random disc with some goofy ass game, and I was like, okay, what's this? And then it stuck, right? And funny enough, I still haven't played Psychonauts 2. I've heard it's a genuinely really good game. Maybe it doesn't live up to the original, and I expect I'll get around to it eventually. But the original has always had a special place in my heart. So when I first saw that there was a proper HD mod for the game, I knew I had to try it, and I had to make this video. So the HD mod, and this is where Shiba Inc.'s work comes in. It does exactly what it says. Being the kind of project that it is, it doesn't really turn the game into something crazy and extravagant. It just enhances what's already there. The textures are much cleaner, the environments feel much sharper, and it adds a little detail into some of the textures on the PC version were very blurry, or even you couldn't even recognize what you were looking at, right? And this mod fixes exactly that, and whatever was already there looking great, like the character models, it enhances that even more. And it makes everything stand out much more. And it's also worth noting that Shiba Inc. originally had said most of these textures were AI upscaled, but over time a lot of that work has been touched up by hand. So if you're someone who's not a fan of AI upscaling, which I understand, I'm not here to bash anyone, then you'll be happy to know that a lot of these textures are now being kind of touched up by hand and made to look better. From what I understand, the goal has always been to remove as much of the obvious AI related texture work and make the final result feel more natural, more consistent, and respectful to the original game in its direction. But to my eyes, whatever is already here in this texture pack looks really gorgeous. And you pair this with the reshade provided by Shiba at the same time, specifically the Ultra version, and it really enhances the look of the game. I mean, if I show you a comparison now between the PS2 version and the PC version running mods, or this particular mod, you can see for yourself the differences. Now, I realize this isn't a super fair comparison because the PS2 version does have textures that are even lower resolution than the PC version, but it's probably the best I can give you so you can kind of see what the original game looked like and, you know, what it kind of looks like now with mods. And this would, in my eyes, very happily pass as a remaster of the game. You know, they don't need to go ahead and remake this. We just need a little touch up because the game still holds up extremely well from a gameplay standpoint and from an artistic standpoint as well. So, you know, in my opinion, it should be preserved, especially since the PC version is a little out of date and it has a lot of issues. Like, if you run something like River Tuner, it'll crash your game. Any small thing on your PC could crash this game. So you're gonna have to look at PCGamingWiki when you're modding this, and you're gonna have to just make sure you're crossing things off your list as you go. Now, the one downside of this mod is that the limitation, I would say, probably is the UI. From what the creator explained, the UI textures unfortunately cannot be upscaled as effectively as the rest of the game because they increase in size alongside the resolution, something like that. I believe it's the way Astralathe processes these textures, so instead of fully overhauling them in the same way as the environments or character models, they become larger. So, you know, Shiba just touched them up slightly for now, so they look a bit better. And, you know, it's completely understandable. Old games can be very awkward like this. It sure as shit beats the hell out of using UMod or text mod or whatever and having to reload your textures every time you switch an area. So while the UI is not quite on the same level as the rest of the visual upgrade, it also does not ruin the experience. It's just one of these technical limitations you have to work around with the game from this era. Now, on top of the HD textures, as I mentioned before, Shiba has included a reshade that does a lot of the heavy lifting as well for the overall presentation. It doesn't give a drastic color change. Like, it doesn't oversaturate colors or desaturate colors or any of that nonsense. What it kind of does is adds like a bit of ambient shading and a bit of bloom, I guess you could say, like a subtle bloom effect and small color highlights as well, I think, and it gives the game so much more depth without making it look overdone, like, you know, some reshades you see. And to me, that is important because it really doesn't change or take away from the original way the game looks. It doesn't, you know, by contrasting this, if you look at the way the PS2 version looks, it has this kind of like almost like a slight gray filter or haze going over the screen. And it's not the nicest thing to look at, of course, but, you know, what this reshade does is it kind of improves on the base PC version and, you know, what's already there. Puts in the high, and especially if you have an OLED, this looks really nice. Now, there are some downsides. It's not perfect. The only real disadvantage, and I notice it's a pretty minor thing, there is a bit of pop in here and there, and I'm not sure if this was like this on the original PC version. It very well could be. And also the reshade can leave occasional like visual artifacts during certain cutscenes. You might see the ambient occlusion clip through slightly, or notice the odd effect where it clearly was not designed around every single camera angle. But this is a very small price to pay for what is otherwise probably the modern way to play Psychonauts on a PC. Outside of the small issues, the game looks cleaner, sharper, more vibrant, and far more modern. It still keeps the original art direction intact, but now has that extra layer of polish that makes it feel so much closer to an actual remaster. Now, I've featured a lot of clips in this video of the game, but I didn't feature any of the clips in the later parts of the game because I feel like if you want to play it, I don't want to spoil what it looks like with all the improved textures. I think it's something you should play for yourself and see for yourself because, like, you know, there's no way I can't just not replay this game now after I got all the mods to work. So, installation warning, like I mentioned, before you go and install everything at once, there is something I do need to stress. Installing all of this can be a little bit of a hassle because Psychonauts, as I said, on PC is a bit temperamental, especially if you have RTSS running. I was having random crashes and I couldn't figure out what it was until I realized PCGamingWiki has a section dedicated to this. But other than this, I've installed the texture pack and everything with the cutscenes upscaled as well, and it hasn't crashed on me once after turning off RTSS, so yeah, it's been a very stable experience. Now, I can see in the comments as well that Shiba Inc. has asked, well, he needs testers for this mod, because, you know, it'll make his life a lot easier if there was people testing this. So if you do run into any issues or crashes, if you're trying this out, just leave a comment on the Nexus page with what you're doing and what's happening, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you out. So final verdict is this a real remaster? No, obviously it's not. It's just, you know, mods that make it look like it's remastered. It's, you know, the original game running with mods, but it feels like the closest thing we currently have to a modern remaster. Why they haven't remastered this game yet, I don't know. Maybe because it's playable on Steam, modern systems, I guess, but, you know, I'm sure there's a dedicated fan base for this game, and if they remastered it now, they'd get at least a few sales and it wouldn't cost them a lot. The HD texture mod here does a fantastic job clearing up the visuals, whatever muddy textures remain, and the reshade gives that nice, subtle, effective boost to the color palette. You know, it's very appealing to the eye. And once everything's working properly, the end result is beautiful, as you can see there. And thanks to Shiba Inc. and the modding community, we now have a version that feels closer to the Psychonauts I remember in my head. You know, everything's nice and clean, and it doesn't detract from the original art style. So if you're a fan of Psychonauts or you have never played it before and want to experience it in a cleaner way, I definitely recommend checking this out. Just make sure you follow the installation carefully, test the game as you go, and give the full credit to the people who actually made these mods possible, because without that work, this video would not exist, and maybe one day we'll get an actual official remaster, but until then, this is a pretty damn good way to revisit one of the most creative games of its era. Thank you for watching, and peace out.